This episode of Legacy Curious is brought to you by Legacy Protectors. Customize insurance strategies for business owners and families who aspire to create a lasting legacy. Hello there, and welcome to Legacy Curious, the show where we explore what it really means to protect, grow, and pass on everything you've worked so hard to build. I'm your host, David Gravelle. I'm a life insurance strategist, business legacy coach, and founder of Legacy Protectors. Each episode, I sit down with the bold thinkers, entrepreneurs, and everyday visionaries who are turning their values into lasting impact in business, in life, and across generations. On today's episode, we speak to Kirsten Land. Kirsten Land is the CEO of Land Enterprises Roofing, a residential roofing company based in Edmond, Oklahoma. She became the sole owner in 2019 following the passing of her husband, Brian Land, who founded the company and previously served as its CEO. With a background as a special education teacher, Kirsten brings a unique leadership style rooted in empathy, structure, and clear communication. Skills she now applies to running a successful business. In addition to her professional role, she's a dedicated mom to 2 teenage boys and serves as the current president of the Edmond Chapter of Ambucs. As she leads the company forward, Kirsten is deeply committed to honoring Brian's legacy while thoughtfully building her own. One grounded in resilience, purpose, and care for both people and community. Well, welcome, Kirsten, to the show. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you, David. How are you?
We're doing great here in Oklahoma City, both of us. It's hot. We've been living under some heat here. We've had plenty of weather. And I know sometimes that's, good for business, but also a challenge to your crews trying to get the work done. So how's things going there at Land Enterprises Roofing this season?
It's really good. We're just having to be very careful in the heat, making sure everyone stays hydrated and safe. And during the hottest parts of the day, we take some time off to relax.
Well, great. Well, we thank you on behalf of your crew for looking after them. I'll tell you right now, our community is well served by business owners who see the people first and the workers second. So thank you for that. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show. I think you're a wonderful person doing a great job here in Oklahoma City. So let's just start to get to know you a bit and have you tell us a bit about where you grew up and what your young life was like.
I'd be happy to. So I was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and my parents were wonderful parents. I'm the oldest of 3 girls. And then we moved around a bit. My dad worked for NASA. He was actually a science teacher, and he became what's known as a space mobiler. So we moved to Wisconsin, and he started traveling. And then eventually they moved us to Virginia, where he worked at NASA headquarters. So we lived there for 3 years. And then we moved back to Brown Deer, Wisconsin. And my dad was the executive director of a science museum there. I believe it's now called Discovery World. So that was a really great experience. He got it open and up and running. And after a few years, he was lured down to Stillwater, Oklahoma for OSU to work at the college to get his doctorate while he continued to work for NASA. And then eventually they left me behind when I went to school at OSU, and they went down to Houston to the Johnson Space Center. So it was a lot of fun, a lot of being able to adapt and change to new schools, meeting new friends, getting to see different parts of the country.
Yeah. Kirsten, you wouldn't believe me if I told you almost every one of my guests has a backstory. It must be something about entrepreneurs. They get such confidence in their young lives that they feel they can do anything. Is that when it started for you and you thought, you know what, there isn't a challenge that can't come my way? Did that resilience start at that young age?
That's a great question. I wish, we tend to be our own toughest critics. So it's hard for me to see myself that is something to that. I had to learn how to bloom where I'm planted in the different places. When I moved to Stillwater, I was a sophomore in high school. So I'm starting off at Stillwater High School, brand new, not knowing anybody, a different part of the country. I had a Wisconsin accent. And so that made me stand out. Plus I was tall, and my name, Kirsten, was hard to pronounce. So people definitely got to see me and know me. And it took a while to really get involved and make friends at the school. So I think it does teach you to be confident in yourself and to have to work through those different challenges because it's hard as a kid to be seen as different. And it really took some time to be accepted.
Okay, and so you're in Stillwater in high school. What are some of the things that you got involved in? Was it sports or did you like music?
So for me, it was a speech and drama. I loved going to speech debates. I would do things like prose, where I would perform, or I perform poetry. I did very well with that. And then I was in the drama department. And so we were in a play. My senior year, we did the play You Can't Take It With You. And I had one of the memorable characters out of that play. And it was so much fun. And that's where my senior year, is where I met a lot of people and really found my group of people, if you will, at the high school and had such a great time. And I'm still friends with many of those people.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, my daughter, she has a friend who's in the performing arts here, and we went and saw her in a play. And I think Oklahoma's doing a great job supporting the arts. We saw a play over the Christmas season as well. So, that did that lead to other opportunities when you got out of school? How did you kind of carry that on? And do you still do some of that today?
Well, when I went to OSU, my plan was to be a broadcast journalism major. I really wanted
Okay.
to be on the news. I thought I had that ability. I've always enjoyed giving speeches in school when a lot of my friends like, how do you do that? Why would you do that? I would be like, give me more.
Right.
That was something that I excelled at and I enjoyed doing was being in front of a group. And, I probably came by honestly from my father, who was a teacher and did a lot of presentations. And my mother was also very well spoken.
Okay. Did you ever think about being an astronaut? I hate to throw that in there, but when your family has that kind of history,
Yeah, no, never. I wasn't very good in science or math
yeah,
for that matter. And I
yeah.
think I probably wouldn't have been able to stand leaving Earth and being weightless. The
I bet
anti-gravity.
there's a lot of physical parts to it that you may not think about too much until it's happening. So, what did you do out of university then? You graduated OSU. Is that where you met your husband?
I did meet my husband at OSU. I always like to joke. I met him when I was in high school and he was a senior at OSU.
Okay.
And I was still a kid. He was more like an adult, so it didn't work. But then when I went to Stillwater my freshman year, second semester, we reconnected. So I'm a freshman, and now he's still a senior. And so we used to always laugh about that. He took the long path to get his degree, that's for sure.
Guilty
And
as
so I went to
charged.
OSU. I ended up changing my degree to become a teacher. That was what really was my calling. And so couple years into OSU, I decided to transfer to UCO in Edmond, which was a fantastic decision. They have a wonderful education program. It was just, while I love OSU, I still do UCO, which is the University of Central Oklahoma in Edmond.
Yeah.
It was just a much better fit for me, and I really enjoyed it. And that's where I felt like I blossomed into becoming a teacher.
Yeah, good for you. And so you stayed local as a teacher, is that right? You taught here in the Oklahoma City School Board, is that correct?
Yes, I got started in Oklahoma City schools at a school that no longer exists, but it was called Hoover Middle School. I don't recall what it is now. For 5.5 years, man, that really challenged me. I always wanted to work in a tougher school. I just didn't know it was going to happen right away in
Right
the
away,
beginning of my
first day.
career. So it
Yeah.
challenged me, but I really enjoyed it. And then it was hard, but I moved to Edmond North High School, and that was an incredible experience. I taught there for 7 years before I quit, which was very sad to do because I loved being a teacher.
Right. I come from a line of teachers too. My dad was a principal, started as a teacher. My mom was a teacher. My sister and brother are teachers. So I just have a lot of admiration for teachers. They care so much, undervalued sometimes in our society. But again, thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit more about that type of calling where were you called to service, right? Is that how
Mhm.
you feel your role today? Is it still have that kind of I guess emphasis for you?
Absolutely. So when I was a kid, I was in special ed myself. And I ended up becoming a special education teacher. I just always had a heart for people who struggled just like I did and wanted to help them. So when I got into roofing, it was really through my husband. He had started the company. It was his vision. It's what he loved. And after we had our first child, after so much time, I thought I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. He convinced me to come work with him in the business. And so I was able to use a lot of the skills that I learned being a special education teacher to work in the roofing business. But the thing that, even though they're two different careers, the thing that's very similar, it's about caring for people, taking care of people, providing
Right.
a good service. And that's what I love about what I do today.
Yeah, and it definitely is in our part of the country. We rely heavily on our roofing companies because everyone's affected by it at one time or another. And if it's not this year's storms, it could be next year's storms. So tell me a bit about your role early in the company. What did you come and what were you doing right away? I think it was, some capturing some of the organizational paperwork and the administrative. Is that right?
It is, yeah. So from my time as a special ed teacher, when you have to have what's called IEP meetings, individual education plans. It's a lot of documenting, a lot of writing. Certain things have to go in certain places. And that's how I was able to use a lot of that information for creating a system for our roofing company, how to document, because documentation in special education is incredibly important. So I wanted to document what our processes are, but also our communication with our customers. There's a saying, if it's not written down, it didn't happen.
Right.
So the better you have things documented, the better you can recall the information and make sure you're providing the service that you promised. So that was a big thing that I did, just helping us get organized. I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily the most organized person, but in situations I can definitely do it and work hard. It takes a lot of energy, but I can make it happen. And that's what I did. I created a system for us where we were able to kind of keep track of files, keep track of customers, and offer them the service they were promised.
Well, especially with insurance claims, which I'm sure is a large portion of your work, that is crucial. You have to document and provide that support to your clients in order for them to get the money they deserve out of their policies. So I know it plays a crucial role. So how long were you doing that before we lost Brian? Let's talk a bit about that. How long were you in the business, and how many parts of it did you see before we lost Brian?
So I believe that I started in 2009. And at the time, I had one little boy that we adopted from China, Daniel. At the time, he was probably 2 years old. And then we adopted our second son in 2010. So it was somewhere before we came back with our second son that I started working in the business between the two boys. And so I would work a couple days a week, then I'd be home with them the other days of the week. That way I could kind of balance and have not if there's ever balance in your life, but the most balance that I could
Sure.
have time to work and then time to really enjoy being a mom to our boys. So Brian unfortunately passed away in 2019. And so we had a good long time to work and ask, how do you work with your husband? But we really enjoyed it. I mean, there were
Yeah.
definitely some challenging times, and we had to draw some boundaries. Like, okay, now we're not going to talk business; we're just going to talk personal. And that was harder to actually do than you would think, because a lot of our life it either was our boys or it was our business. So we had to be
Right.
very mindful to let's focus on other things too.
Okay, well, let's talk a bit about that transition then. You go from support person, your husband, it was his vision, his company for the better part of his working career, and now you're left trying to, pick up what's left and move forward. How did that all play out for you?
Well, it was shocking. It wasn't something that we had planned for. My husband had an undiagnosed birth defect, and unfortunately he died during surgery. So I was not prepared emotionally and mentally for that, let alone having to raise two little boys. By this point, they're 10 and 12 years old, and then
Mhm.
also running a business. So that was really difficult. And I think anyone who goes through a significant grief, you understand that you're just taking it sometimes step by step. And there's a mantra in the grief community, like just do the next right thing. And that's what I had to do is I couldn't even think an hour, 3 hours, 5 hours, let alone a week or 2 weeks ahead. I just, whatever I could do
Wow.
this moment, then do the next thing, then do the next thing. So it was really difficult in the beginning. And on top of it, we had a hailstorm 6 days after he passed in our main part of our service area. So we really had to, I had to summon the strength to, okay, I got to get back to work and I've got to take care of my kids and I've got to plan a funeral. So we had to do all these things at one time. And, my memory of that time is pretty sketchy because when you go through grief, it affects your memory.
Right.
What I do recall is just having so many people there to support me, to walk beside me. We had one of my friends who owns an insurance company. She had her employees come in for the day and they helped me make phone calls to customers. Do you want an inspection after this hailstorm? And then they would help set it up. And we just did everything that we could to keep things going. And they often tell you when you're going through grief, don't change anything for a year. So I really just told my staff, just keep doing it the way that Brian did it.
Right.
And we'll figure things out in about a year's time or less. And I met with each employee just to see where they were. And everyone had given me their word that they would stay, they would help, that, of course they were devastated to lose Brian as well. So it was just a very difficult time.
Yeah. But talk about, continuing and even solidifying relationships on another level with your employees. That type of intimacy is, just so valuable when you're trying to serve clients and have the trust of your fellow worker and the knowledge that they are caring for your clients just as much as you would, and doing it, I would imagine, in some respects to pay a tribute to Brian, right? Was there a sense of that in the organization for a while, and is that still part of, I guess, the day-to-day life of the company?
Absolutely. I think in the beginning, we were all just we wanted to preserve Brian's legacy. I know I did, even our children did, because the night I had to share the terrible news about their dad passing away. My youngest said, well, Mom, how are we going to have enough food to eat? What are we going to do? And I said, your dad took great care of us. And if we need to, I will sell the business. And both of them said, no, we want to keep that business. You need to keep the business. Now they're 10 and 12. And of course,
Right.
I'm in a state of grief.
Yeah.
Okay, not realizing what all that entailed. I just thought we'll just carry on. And I think there was a part of me that I couldn't control anything that was going on. But I thought this may be one way that I can control. Try to keep things as pretty much the same as we could. Same house, same kids' school,
Right.
Keep the business.
Keep the routines going, right?
Yes.
Yeah. It's
Yes.
such a calming force when you know that things are, even the time of emotional trauma, that you're going to be able to continue. And it sounded like you had great support too. So, had you planned your financial protection at that time? Did Brian have life insurance, and was that business insurance, and were those processes and policies in place?
Yes, fortunately, we did have a lot of it in place, and I'm so thankful. We made sure we had enough life insurance. We actually probably had more than we need. There was a policy I was supposed to cancel as we got a new policy, and I procrastinated. And I guess in this case, sad to say, it actually worked in my favor because it gave me a little extra money. But since I didn't cancel that, but it's the policy that you never want to use. But we had that in place. We in place with all the plans. So the business, the house, everything seamlessly came to me. I didn't have to go to court and do any probate or any of those kinds of things. Everything just transferred nicely over to me, which was a huge relief. I mean, sometimes I know people now who've lost someone and they have had to go through probate, or they have had other issues, or they've had people fight over money. And I think, how grateful am I that I didn't have to do that amongst everything else that I was charged with, and just dealing with the loss of my best friend and the father of my children. How do I handle this? I didn't have to worry about that. And I was really thankful.
Well, we thank you for sharing that message here. It's part of the work that I do every day, is to help people get prepared. We talk about it. These are necessity types of conversations that, you can't avoid. Everyone's going to be in this situation at some point, and the more prepared you are, the better you're able to heal from the emotional trauma, financial trauma. You don't want to have to worry about if you can for, like you said, a year. You want everything just to kind of run on automatic for you. So I'm glad that worked out for you. So let's fast forward a little bit. Now you've been running the business by yourself, correct? For the last 6 years? Is it 6 years now? So
Yes.
talk about that. Talk about who got through the hardest part. Let's say you're in year 2 or 3 and now you're really, you're looking around and you're like, I guess I am this person now. And I guess I'm doing this, right? So what was that realization like? And then, what did you decide to do after that? Like once you had the reins and you were like, oh, I can drive this ship. Now I know what to do. What did you decide, it comes next, or what's the future look like? So talk about both of those if you could.
Sure. Yeah. So that was difficult at first. I just thought we're just going to carry on. And after a while, I realized, okay, I really start guiding the ship. I think I was just existing, and problems started to occur amongst the staff and the way things were being done, because while I was there, I don't know how emotionally I was there. I might have just been there physically. And I just kept saying, do it the way that Brian would have done it. And so I really had to get more involved in that and be the leader that they needed. And I have to say, probably for the first couple of years, I was not sufficient at that. I have to give myself grace because I was going through a hard time. But even though I give myself grace, you don't always get that grace from everybody around you. After a while, like, hey, life moves on. Let's get going. While everyone was empathetic, they were still needing me to get things done. And that was fair. I think that's completely reasonable, but it was just very hard for me to rationalize that. And then I believe there was also a lot of, as some people like to call it, imposter syndrome. This was Brian's company. Yes, I helped him, but this was what his vision was. I was going to be a teacher and that's a mom. And that's what I wanted to do. So I had to start believing in myself, and I joined some organizations where I was around other people who owned companies, and I had to start believing that in my make decisions. And that was the one thing for me. Making decisions sometimes is very difficult. Having conflict is difficult for me, and I've had to learn to overcome that. I'm not sure I've exactly overcome it, but I have to work through the uncomfortableness because that's what's needed. And the more that I did that, the more I was able to take ownership of the company. And I still find myself thinking about Brian as I'm onboarding a new employee today. I was sharing some stories about, well, here's the reason why I do this, because this is, what Brian really believed, and I believe it too. And so I find myself still going back and talking about that. But the truth is, this is really my company now with Brian, looking over us, if you will. And I've made some changes that I think are very good, probably not very tremendous changes, because I do like things to, the way that things were. And so I've had to really challenge myself, we need to think outside the box. And I've had some great employees say, hey, I know this is the way Brian did it. I know this is the way we've always done it, but we got to let's think about this instead. And so once you kind of get on that train, if you will, then it starts getting easier and easier to making it your own and trying new things.
Yeah. Is metal roofing? Is that one of those new things? So talk a bit about that. Is that completely your decision, or was it part of the conversations you had with the rest of your team around, well, if we're going to expand, that's a great offering to look at. And that's a whole new skill set. Frankly, working with metal is different than, asphalt shingles. So talk a bit about that then.
Yeah, so actually metal roofing was something that we had done when my husband was alive, as well as doing flat roofing. And those were two things I took out of our services once he passed, because I thought, I don't know enough about that. I don't know that we have enough of the talent to do it. But metal roofing has always been something that I was very interested in, especially as you drive around and you see a lot of people with it, and people would ask me, hey, can you do metal roofing? So that was one area I saw to expand the company. Even if someone didn't end up getting a metal roof, at least we had the conversation with them. And if they didn't get the metal roof, then we can still help them with the asphalt roof. When I'd say, sorry, I don't do the metal roof, then I would have to refer them to one of my competitors that I love, and then they would get the asphalt roof. So we had to kind of really think about, this is a way we can expand the business, help our customers, but it's also just a really neat product that we can offer and install for people. And my heart is always to help. I don't want to help and be out of my realm of ability. I don't want, we've done that a long time ago where you offer too many services and you don't really do a great job at any of them, but it stayed within what we like to do. And so that's one that we added, I think about a year or 2 years ago, and it's been great.
Okay, so we've heard about Brian's legacy. I think, you know, if I had to say, the company has embraced that theme and that mantra of Brian's legacy. Do you feel like his legacy has been realized? Like, you know, could you speak to what he wanted as a legacy, and do you think, you know, he'd be satisfied with what's come about and how he's been remembered?
Yeah. So one thing, as Brian and I are both Christians, or Brian was a Christian and I am a Christian. And one thing that as his faith evolved, you know, he used to pray for hailstorms. And then he realized, you know what? God owns everything. He owns our homes, our cars, and that's just our belief system. And so he thought, if I'm praying for hail, then I'm praying for destruction on God's things and God's people and harm to people. So he changed that to I pray for people that I can help. And for him, since he really felt that God owns everything, he wanted to help people be good steward of the things that they had. So help them make good decisions regarding whether or not they should replace their roof, or if a repair would be what they needed, what kind of shingle would be best for them. And so he took that very, very seriously, and he learned a lot about the different shingles that are out there so he could provide the best solution for each homeowner.
Okay, and now that, you know, you're building your legacy, let's get to our $1 million question, legacy curious. And, you know, what is it that you would want to be remembered for, and what do you want to have left behind for not only your family but for the business as well? Because it is, you know, it's such a personal entity right now. Just, you know, over the last 20 plus years that it's been operating, and it is about you and Brian. So maybe speak a bit to that. What are your thoughts?
So for the company, I really want to take good care of people, give them good advice about how to maintain their roofs, or how, if it's time to replace it or to have a repair, and for people to know that we've truly taken care of them. And roofing, the roofing industry in itself does not have the best reputation. And so we want to have the best reputation about how we cared for our clients. Caring is one of our core values, and so is teamwork, integrity, quality. Those things really embody who we are, but for me, caring is important. And so that's the legacy that I want to leave behind, that Land really knew what they were doing. We don't just focus on one kind of shingle because we get the most kickbacks from it, or they help us out with advertising. We pick the shingles that we feel really truly are the best, and we want to provide the best quality of install for our customers. So we use 6 nails instead of 4 because it gives them a better wind warranty. Sure. So that's where my heart is as a leader. And also I take really good care of my employees, my subcontractors. And this is a business that I want to, whomever takes it on, whether it's my family or it's someone who buys this business, I want it to always stand for those things.
Yeah, good for you. Okay, so if you can, separate yourself. I know this is hard because it's such a large part of you. Separate yourself from the business and talk about, you know, again, what people would want to be remembered for you when they think of you beyond the organization. You have some philanthropy goals. You know, I know you were a teacher, so you're positive your students loved you. But what else beyond being a roofing company leader do you hope you're remembered for?
Yeah, that's such a good question, because I guess I want people to know that I truly cared about them, and that I never gave up. Even on my hardest days, I got in there. And whether it is being there for my family, for my friends, for my children, I want them to know that I really loved them and I cared about them, and I did the best, you know, that I could every single day.
Well, we thank you for your efforts in the roofing community, for the homeowners out there. If you're looking for someone that's going to do a great job, stand by their work, keep their employees safe on your property, and be there in the near term, in the next 5 to 10 years, reach out to Land Roofing. We'll put the description, your contact information in the description. And Kirsten, we thank you so much for coming on. Maybe we could have you back on to give us some roofing tips on, maybe top 10 ways to keep your roof maintained between storm seasons or something.
That would be great. I would love that.
Okay, well, thank you again for being our guest.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you to our listeners and audience for spending time with us today on Legacy Curious. I hope this conversation gave you some insight, encouragement, or just that little spark you needed to keep you moving forward in your own legacy journey. If you got value from today's episode, please take a second to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone else who's building something that matters. And if you're ready to take that next step, protecting your business, planning for retirement, or passing on your legacy with purpose, head to legacyprotectors.life to schedule a conversation. Until next time, I'm your host, David Gravelle, reminding you to stay curious, stay committed, and keep building something worth passing on.